like to sell a $10,000 and like not just 10K, like $10,000, right? So what does it look like to sell a $10,000 coaching package? What does that actually even mean? How do we put that in context? What do we say to even talk to somebody? Like what is, like what needs to happen, right? What conversations, things like that. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. One of the main things that I want to start off with is to let you know that you are okay wherever you are in your journey right now. We were actually just talking about this morning on our coaching call, a client coaching call, that there is a path towards whatever goal that you like to achieve, whatever thing that you want. And that path and that journey it also has value in and of itself. So if your goal destination or one of your goal destinations is to be able to sell a $10,000 coaching package, like that journey on the way there it also has value, and you don't want to like close your eyes and shut your ears off for that actual journey, because then once you get there, right, you get to the place where you want to be or the goal that you want to have, you missed the whole point, which was to enjoy the process along the way. So that's the first thing that I want to start with, is like, you're okay exactly where you are. But if you're here, you're either curious about what it would look like, or you're open to maybe charging 10K, or maybe you already are, but maybe you're not selling enough of it. And so you're wondering, like, do I even want to keep doing this, or is it even worth 10K? So that's what I want to talk more about today. And keeping it all in context with, this applies to any and all coaches. So I don't care if you're coaching someone on how to make their dog sit and stay, you're coaching someone on their health and wellness, you're coaching someone in their business, you're coaching someone on their relationship, whatever it is. If you're coaching someone on how to jump rope, like almost everyone has a 10K coaching package at a minimum. And I say 10K at a minimum because there are people who are doing what you're doing and they're selling 100K coaching packages. And for me, like that's the stretch, like that was the stretch for me. When I first saw that, it blew my mind. And I was like, there are people selling $100,000 coaching packages. Like, how do I get on that train? And like, what would I even offer? And so I guess that's a good place to segue and kind of start, is like, what are the first thoughts that come to your mind when someone says you can sell a $10,000 coaching package? Like, what are the first, like, what was your initial reaction when you saw it, or when you said, okay, I think this might be for me, or this is something that I want to do? What was the first thought in your mind? When I first saw that I could sell a $100,000 coaching package, which I haven't at this point, it hasn't felt congruent for me. And so I haven't even gone down that path. But the first time I saw that and there was like a realization, it was like, okay, like, what would I even sell? Like, that was one of the first things I thought. And then my next thought was like, okay, but who would buy it, right? And then my next thought was like, can I actually do that? Like, am I qualified enough? So there were all these thoughts and doubts that came up. Hey, LB, happy Self-Care Saturday. So what were your first thoughts? Like when someone says, or when I say you can sell a $10,000 coaching package, like what are the first thoughts that come up for you? What was your initial thought that came up? Great. I believe, but help my unbelief. Yep. We're going to tap into that and talk about that today. How much of my time do they get? That's a great one. And that is part of the reason that it hasn't felt congruent for me to sell a 100K coaching package, because that's one of the humps that I want to get over. Is like, I want to sell it, but without offering more of my time. So we'll talk about that as well. That's what I'm doing. I will be teaching you. All right. The what of what I would put inside the offer. Like, how would I compile the elements necessary to provide value? Those are your first thoughts. Okay, perfect. Other thoughts? What are you guys first thoughts that come up when you say sell a 10K coaching package, or anything that feels out of reach right now? So if it's 25K, 30K, or even 5,000. But I want to kind of stretch you guys a little bit with the multiple 5-figure. It's possible. Celso says, Robin says, what can I package for that amount? Yeah. So those are a lot of times like the initial thought is like, okay, what would I even provide? Right? Same thing. Wendy says, I'm wondering if I'm giving enough info for the client to give results, right? So once again, like, what am I putting in it? What am I packing in it? How do I connect to those big players? So the type of client who is willing to purchase a $10,000 coaching package. Can I do this as a new coach, not just a new coach, but like a new coach? Okay. Where will I find that client? Yep. How much will people actually think that it's worth it? And what content will I provide? So yeah, so it kind of boils down to 3 things, right? Like, who am I to make the sale? Who is the client that's willing to buy? And what are we actually putting in the package? Like, what are we offering them? So who, and what, essentially, right? So who am I, who are they, and what are they getting? And if we boil it down to those 3 things, you might realize that those are the exact same questions that you had at the start of your coaching business when you wanted to sell a coaching package, period, before there was even a price. Like, who am I to coach someone? Who is that person that's actually looking for my coaching, and what can I actually offer them, right? And so once you realize that, now we can kind of put those to the side for a second, and we can just look at the actual number, right? Because if your thought is, and if you realize that those questions were the same for you when you first started charging, or when you first set your rates, and you had a hard time getting comfortable with those rates, well, now it's really just about how do we get comfortable with this new rate, right? At the very first start of my coaching journey, when I first started coaching clients, I didn't know what to offer. I have a lot of different skills. There's a lot of things that I'm good at. I didn't know what people would pay for. And I was concerned that maybe I wasn't qualified, right? And that's kind of where people kind of get down that path of like going for coaching certifications, or going for, whatever alphabet soup makes you feel qualified. Even though coaching in the US is an unregulated industry, like there's no specific coaching certification you need to become a coach. A lot of times, like, someone else giving us that stamp of approval makes us feel like we can move forward with what has been given to us as our gift. And when I first started coaching, I took like a Strength Finders exam to try to figure out, like, what are my strengths? And I realized that they were so abstract. My number 1 strength was strategy, which is like, okay, chess moves, but like, applied to what was my question. And then my second strength was vision, like being able to see how something would play out. And so I put those together. There's a third one that I don't remember right now, but I put those together, and I was like, okay, I can help you figure out the strategy to get to where you want to go, right? And so when I first started coaching, I was charging $800 for a 8-week coaching program. And we got 1 call every other week. So essentially $200 per call, okay? And that's where a lot of coaches start, is charging hourly or charging per call. And then the next step is kind of like going into a package offer, right? So I worked with those first couple of clients. I didn't have a very specific ideal client, but I just knew that I wanted to help business owners and people who wanted to earn more money, because that's where I was most passionate. And after I got done coaching those first couple clients, and they all got results in some way or another, I realized that the client that I liked working best with was the service-based entrepreneur. That person got the fastest results, and there were also like the most drastic results from like a start to finish standpoint. And so I remember speaking with my coach at the time, and I said, am I charging enough? which is the question that I get often from my clients. And even, you know, a lot of times when I'm on these live streams, it's like, hey, is that a good rate? And so she suggested that I double my rate for the exact same offer. So she was like, don't change anything about the offer. It's still 8 weeks long, but instead of 800, make it 1600. And I remember thinking like, oh my gosh, like who is going to pay? Because I was already doing a payment plan for the 800. I did, I think like up to 4 payments. It was like two. It's ridiculous. Now that I think back on it, I'm like, we're done in 8 weeks, but your payments are still going. Fortunately, like I had everyone that signed up actually either paid in full, or like one girl was like, I just need to split it in half. And so when she said 1600, my first thought was, oh my gosh, like who is going to spend that amount? Same question, right? So same question that we all came up with, those same 3 questions that we all came up with looking at a $10,000 coaching package. It's just an answer that you don't quite know yet, right? So I was like, who's going to pay 1600? So I remember, and I don't even know why I did this, but I just remember thinking like, okay, if she says that I can double my rate, she's my coach, I'm paying her good money, so I'm going to believe her, I'm going to borrow her confidence. And if she says I can double my rate, like 2,000 is not that much different from 1,600. It's only like $400 more. So if someone is willing to pay 1,600 and I can share the value and explain what they're actually getting, then why not 2,000, right? Like not that much, not that big of a difference, right? So I remember the very next client that I pitched that pricing to, they accepted and they signed up, and that was one of, like, I worked with that client and we got some of the best results that I had gotten to date. And so that showed me 2 things. One, that your pricing and the investment to get started with you is based on your belief in what you bring to the table. Okay, so write that down if you haven't already. The investment that you're providing and that pricing for your coaching package is based on your belief of what you bring to the table. Okay, so it starts within, doesn't start with a client. And second thing is when the client shows up and makes a leap, right, and makes that investment, they work a little bit harder and generally they get better results. And that was my first time experiencing that. So I couldn't really set that as a rule yet. All I knew was that I charged more and they got better results. They earned their investment back while working with me. And then since then I've kept up and they've earned like multiple 5 figures from that just one $2,000 investment, right? And after I continued working with clients and I saw like my next stair step was to a 3333 coaching package. And I was starting to learn how to speak to high ticket clients. Okay. I was starting to learn how the conversation is just a little bit different to someone who is willing to stretch and spend, $5,000 versus 2,000 versus 500 versus 800 and so on and so forth. And as I got better with my messaging and my marketing and my belief in what I can bring to the table, I came to the realization that the numbers were just a filter. The numbers were just a way for me to reach that specific ideal client that I want. So that second question of who is actually going to pay for it, the investment actually answers that question. Okay. It's a little bit of I don't want to say like a catch-22, but there is a pricing that speaks to a specific client. Okay. Now I want to give some examples. Hey, Peaches, glad to have you here. I want to give some examples. Okay. Because I was talking to my husband about this session right before we got started. And I was like, give me an idea. Like, why does $10,000 feel like so big? And he started talking about this bike. And this bike is like, how much would you expect to pay for a bike? Like a bike, not like a bike with a motor, not a motorcycle, but just like a bike that you have to push your feet on. In general, prices are what? A couple $100 for like a top of the line bike. Maybe if you go to like Walmart, you can get Like, I know I can get a bike at Walmart for like $75. You know, maybe $120-ish. And like a top of the line bike, if you go to like a nice bike store, you know, maybe you're looking at, I think 1,100 or 1,200 was kind of like that range that we saw. Right. Yeah. So like 1,500. Yeah, that's a great point, Quentin. I'm glad you said that. So you guys write that down too if you didn't get that. The numbers are to differentiate your clientele. Okay. So yeah, so like 1,500, about 300, 200. Just the bike that you pedal with your feet, and maybe even a competition bike, like something that you might take like off-road, you know, which I'm going to show you guys right now. Okay. So we started looking at, and there's this new bike. Okay. This bike is it's one that you pedal your feet. You see they have their feet on there, right? You can go through, you know, off-road, you can go in the sand and stuff like that. It looks really cool, right? And this bike is a $2,000 bike at a minimum. Okay. So the Pro bike, which you can pre-order, is $2,500. Okay. I don't know if you can see that there. It's kind of, I can't click it, but you can see that. Okay. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. I can't. Okay. Then they have this F5 trail bike that's $3,600. Okay. Yeah, there's some sales, right? So you can, that's the second one. You got this, we're still pedaling with our feet. Okay. We haven't sat on the bike and like kicked our feet up yet. Okay. $7,000. Okay. Yeah. For a road bike, $3,000 to $5,000. That's exactly what we're looking at right now. So so there's a client who wants this bike. This is a business. They're obviously not in business to go out of business. They're in business to stay in business, to make money, to be profitable. They're freaking out of stock on this $2,000 bike. But meanwhile, there are people who will only spend $75 on a bike, right? So as we're starting to understand that the number is really just to differentiate your package. So now let's go up one level. And let's go to a bike where you actually do kick your feet up. So I went to harleydavidson.com, and they have an electric bike at $30,000. So now we're like, okay, so now we're on a different, you know, obviously it's a little bit different of a bike. It's got, you know, a motor in it, and you can kick your feet up. But there are also motorcycles that are not $30,000. But when someone wants a Harley Davidson, they want a Harley Davidson. They don't just want a motorcycle. Okay. And I talk about this a little bit in I talk about this a couple times in different trainings where I've done, where I talk about not making yourself a commodity. A commodity is like orange juice. Like you can get any orange juice. Something that's not a commodity is like Tropicana, right? Even though it is a type of orange juice, it is orange juice, but it's Tropicana. It's like when your mom sends you to the store and she says, go get me Tropicana, you better not come back with the store brand orange juice. She wanted Tropicana, right? So that's what this is. This is not a commodity. This is a Harley Davidson bike. Okay, so now we're kind of getting a little bit clearer on how do we get to that 10K. First is we understand that we have a client at every level, right? So there's 6 bikes as an example on here, and one of them is $7,000. That's after the sale. Before the sale, $7,400. That means they have a client who is willing to buy a bike that's almost $10,000. Okay. We've got a Harley Davidson, not just a motorcycle, but a Harley Davidson at $30,000. We have a $10,000 haircut. So this is an article I found. I just started typing in like $10,000 haircut. This is the French president. This was from 2016. Okay. So it's not in the context of today, but it is post-recession, right? 2016 is post-recession. Apparently his hair person gets paid $10,000 a month. So he doesn't have that much hair that like it probably could take like a Flowbee or whatever the thing is, like pick it up and just snip it, right? $10,000 on a haircut. There is a client, okay? There is a client at every level. Here's some $10,000 boots, okay? These boots still keep your toes covered like any other boots. The difference is that this brand, Saint Laurent, they have determined their client. Their client wants a $10,000 boot, right? And these look really cool actually, and they don't look uncomfortable because they're not super high. I'm not that $10,000 boot client, but there is someone who is a client at that level for the boot, okay? And then we all know, maybe you don't, but Birkin bags, Hermes bags, right? They're more than $10,000. That's like a house, right? You can get a maybe on wheels, but still at between $10,000 and $70,000 for a Kelly bag, okay? And this blue bag is gorgeous. I'm that client, okay? I'm not ready to make that investment yet, but that is me. Like, I love that bag. I love the look, even that color. I'm like, that's me. And so that's the thing. Like, there are people at every level for every type of investment, for every type of coach. And that's why I said it applies to all coaches. See, Terrell's been looking at those boots for years. Like, there's someone at that level. And the thing is that you haven't opened your mouth and said, my coaching package is $10,000. And that's the only thing that's holding you back, is that you haven't set that price. You haven't made it that investment. Because this crocodile bag could absolutely be $5,000, $2,000. If we broke it down to how much it costs to produce, it definitely wouldn't be $70,000. It doesn't cost $70,000 to produce the bag. Obviously, they would be breaking even. That would be dumb, right? In general, most clothing has a 300% markup, and that's just at like Forever 21, right? So like, it's pennies to manufacture some of these items, and then they're marked up 300%. That's how, when you go to the store and they're like 70% off, you think you're getting a deal. They're still making 100 or 150% on it, whatever that math is, right? So the problem is that you just haven't set the rate. All right, second thing is you haven't positioned yourself. So there's a reason that Harley Davidson is Harley Davidson. They have positioned themselves that way. There's a culture around investing in a Harley Davidson by being a Harley owner, right? They've created a culture. They've created desire. This is all marketing. It's all manufactured. If society breaks down tomorrow, you can't eat a Harley Davidson bike. You could ride one to go maybe somewhere safer or whatever, but like, if it comes down to survival, like, it's not food, and it's not helping you plant any food, and it's not shelter. So when you think about that, like, everything beyond food and shelter is a want, right? And even in the categories of food and shelter, there are tiers that break down different clients. I saw my dream home. It's here in Atlanta. It is in the exact location where I want to be. It's $1.8 million. Okay. There's, I could also live in a home that costs, I think some of the new construction, you can get as low as like 150, 200. They both do the same thing. They cover your head, protect you from the rain, and they give you somewhere to sleep, right? But the $1.8 million home also has a pool and a tennis court, and it has a theater, and it has like all these things. I'm like, I never need to go anywhere. Like, this is it. This is the dream home. It has a drive with its own gate. I'm like, this is it. This is me. Like, but there's different tiers, right? So there's different, there's a client at every level, because that home has been sold more than once, right? And there's different tiers. But what you need to do is you have to actually set that number, and you have to choose that rate, and you have to position yourself, okay? So let's talk about positioning yourself. So let's talk about setting the rate first, okay? So setting the rate, what that looks like is you can create a package that puts you out of your comfort zone, okay? And what that looks like is you don't have to change your current coaching package at all, Okay. You don't have to change the pricing. I'm not pricing. You don't have to, yeah, you don't have to change the pricing. You don't have to change what's included in it. You can leave that current coaching package, right? You already know that one works. You're already selling that one. Fine. Okay. Keep it. What you can do though, is you can add a second coaching package that provides a little bit higher value. And we're going to talk about what that looks like in just a second. So now you've got two options. Okay. So it's absolutely fine to do that. I have a one-on-one coaching package that's $44.44 per month. And I also have a group coaching. So the one-on-one coaching obviously provides the most access to me. And then I have a group coaching package, which provides a little bit less one-on-one access, even though it provides a lot of private access, like where we're constantly talking. But it's not just like you and I on the phone for whatever, sessions the other one includes. And so all you're going to do is like have those two options. That's it. So now you've got your 10K package, and you can keep the other package, whatever that is. You don't need to change that one. Okay. So that's the very first thing, is just to set the price. And I say, do it to get out of your comfort zone. Fully out of your comfort zone would be like just getting rid of the old one and saying, this is the new price. But the reason that I don't want you to do that is because it needs to be congruent for you. And by congruent, I mean, it needs to be aligned for you and for how you want to show up, who you want to serve, and what makes sense for you. Based on the clients that I want to serve, 100K coaching package is not the right fit for me right now. My goal is to take coaches from like 0 to 100, and they're not at the 100K level yet. Now, when I'm prepared to step out of working with newer coaches or helping people get their businesses started, when I'm prepared to do that, can I take my knowledge of strategy, my knowledge of marketing, and turn that into a 100K coaching package, and my knowledge of manifestation and all that stuff? Like, absolutely. It's not congruent for me right now. So that's the other thing. You've got to make sure that you're in line and aligned with what that pricing is for you. Okay. The way that you'll know is, I always say this to clients, whatever that first number, when I ask you, like, what's your coaching investment, that first number that popped up in your head, that's what's aligned for you. The problem is that a lot of us shrink back. We back off of that number because we're scared, because of those three things, right? Who am I? Who's that person? And what am I actually going to offer them? So you have to put that aside, and just, if that's the price, like, that's the price. The price is the price. The investment is the investment. Like, that's what it is, period. Okay. So now that you've got you've made your decision and you've chosen, am I going to create two different packages, or am I just going to, like, boom, I knew it was supposed to be 14,000, so I'm sticking with 14,000, like, whatever it is, like, that's you. Okay. Then the next thing that you want to do is you do want to position yourself as a high ticket coach. So what does it mean to position yourself as a high ticket coach? All right. So when repositioning yourself and thinking about, okay, what do I need to do in order to position myself as a high ticket coach? The first thing is to understand what positioning even is, right? Positioning is motorcycle versus Harley Davidson, right? And what that means is, like, understanding how to brand yourself and understanding how to have people essentially make those quick associations, right? When I say, just stick with Harley Davidson. When I say Harley Davidson, typically, like, something comes to mind right away. And so that's how our brain works. We work with associations and associations. That's the word I'm looking for. We work with associations. So if I say the word Flurgengurk, your brain is like, what? Because it doesn't have anything to quickly bring to mind, with the exception of, you probably brought, like, if I really were to say, okay, like, tell me, what is a Flurgengurk? You would probably be like, well, it's like, my mind is bringing forward a, like, green amoeba, like the things on Nickelodeon when they, like, drop the slime. And so that's the thing, like, your brain, because it does not know that word, the first thing that it's going to do is it's going to think association. So it's going to go into head, and it's going to start opening drawers and say, when have we ever heard flurgan, and when have we ever heard glurk, and like, what does that kind of sound like, and what are the things that we've seen on TV, and all of that. And it's going to try to bring forth what it thinks is a good fit. And then if you're like, yeah, okay, that sounds about right, then that's what you move forward with. And that's how our brain works. It works with association. So when someone says, so you have to define your brand for yourself. So when someone says Harley Davidson, then they know exactly, like, there's an association for that. And so there's a couple of ways to do this with your own personal brand. You can look at celebrities who embody that or are similar to the brand that you want to portray, and you can continually use that as part of your marketing. So there's a reason that I use Beyonce's countdown song at the start of this live stream. There's a reason that I often use her in like memes and like when I'm sharing things here and there, because that's part of what I want as part of my brand association, right? Like I want that. One part of my brand that I used to say in the past was like, assume the throne, right? Like you're never ready until you actually just say you're ready and you assume the throne. So I wanted that idea of like royalty, and part of her branding that she's already established is Queen Bee, right? So it's before you even, like, you don't realize it, but it's a quick association. And so that's just one way. And I talk about more inside of the Become a High Ticket Coach program, but there's more than one way to start developing your personal brand so you can reposition yourself. There's also a great book called Positioning. It's a white cover with the red letters Positioning. I forget who it's by, but that's a book that I recommend that you get. It's like $9. Go read that book, and they will walk you through a lot of the different brands and how those brands position themselves. I have the pricing on my website for my one-on-one program, and then for the group coaching program, once you do your application, the pricing is in there. And I do that. I don't always recommend that for clients. Depends on where you are. If you're getting more calls than you can handle, then put the investment on there. If you are struggling to get phone calls booked, then you don't need to put the investment on there, because you need the practice. Like, so you don't want anything that will filter too many people out. So there's a strategy behind that. And so I don't want to go too much into that, but yeah. Hey, Zara. Yes. Quick associations. 100%. All right. So that's the second thing. And so I'm going to come to your question in just a second. So that's the second thing. So choose your pricing and just say, like, this is it. This is the investment to work with me. And then second thing is learn how to reposition yourself. And then the third thing that you absolutely have to do if you want to be a quote unquote high ticket coach or charge high ticket prices, or, you know, the 10K, have a 10K coaching package or 100K coaching package, or whatever that pricing is you have to be willing to work on your mindset. And what does that mean when I say work on your mindset? Because it's like, it gets thrown around a lot. But working on your mindset is like, when we first started this and I was like, what are the first thoughts that come up? Every time you have one of those thoughts, that's like a yeah, but it's whatever comes after but, okay? So whatever comes after but, that's likely the limiting belief that you need to work on. And so as you get better at manifestation, you get better at noticing those limiting beliefs as soon as they pop up, and you basically not attack them, but you have a process for disempowering that limiting belief. And, you know, when you first learn how to work on your mindset and work on limiting beliefs, you might not know or understand how to disempower a limiting belief. So one of the first ways that I helped you guys to disempower those limiting beliefs of, who am I to charge this much? Who is the person that would pay this much? And what would I even include in it, is to give you examples of the other side, right? So the example of there's a client at every rate, meaning that first question of like, who would actually pay that much? Like I showed you examples, there's a client at every rate. So that's how I disempower that limiting belief. It's a limiting belief to think that you can't attract someone who's willing to pay $7,100 for a bike that you have to push with your feet, right? So that's one of the first ways that you can start doing that. And when we talked about, okay, well, who am I to do that? Well, I showed you how, someone who started making shoes probably in their basement has the shoes selling for $10,000, right? And I told you my story of how I started charging $800, then I moved to $2,000, then $3,333, then $4,500, then $10K. Oh, I'm going to share the story of how I sold my first $10K package. And then also, what would I include in there? We didn't really talk about that as much. I do talk about that more inside of the Become a High Ticket Coach program, and I give you samples of coaching offers. But that's why I wanted to hold off on your questions also, because that's going to be perfect for this. Okay. All right. So for a one-on-one coaching package for $2,900, how many times did you see a client in your perspective as a business strategist coach? All right. This is my answer to that. And whatever your coaching offer is, you can plug in your own numbers in here. So you can say for a one-on-one coaching package for $4,000, for $10,000, for $100,000, how many times should you see a client in your perspective as a blank coach? Like, so this is a great question and it applies to everyone. And the answer to this question is however many times you need to see them in order for them to get the transformation. That's it. In order for them to get the transformation, how many times do you need to see them? How often do you need to meet? What helps your clients to get the best results? And that is also answers the question of what would I put in the coaching program? A lot of times for a high ticket offer, it's not about what you need to put in it. It's about what you need to take out. And it's about going, I gotta make sure I do this right. It's about going narrow and deep versus shallow and wide. And that is the main difference between a high ticket program versus a low ticket. A low ticket program is typically going to go shallow and wide, and it's going to cover a lot, but just like this deep. And a high ticket program where you're working with a coach to get a transformation is going to go narrow and very, very, very deep. Okay. All right. Questions. What if you're in the food service hospitality industry? How would one create a package around that? So as long as you're coaching, right, and not doing a done for you, even if you're doing a done for you service, but if you're coaching around food service and hospitality, who is that client? Who's that client that's your that wants that big transformation and who is ready to invest? Okay. The book is called Positioning. Yes, thank you guys. Y'all were paying attention and you were here when I mentioned it. What marketing channel and approach do you recommend to place your promotion and exit the customer to register for a free discovery call? What marketing channel and approach do you recommend to place your promotion, to like put an ad and exit the customer to register for a free discovery call? The funnel that I recommend and that I use is typically add to a immediate offer of a low ticket program in order to solve like one problem, right? We're going shallow and wide. And then after that, inviting them to a free live training or maybe on demand. And then from there to invite them to a phone call. So that's the typical funnel that I use. Awesome. Glad that you enjoyed that. And the other thing that I want to say, so I was on the phone with someone a couple of months back, and she was in another country, and she was like, okay, this is how much I'm going to charge. And I asked her why she wanted to charge that much. And she said, well, I think that people around me maybe are not able to invest at a higher level. And I said to her, what I'll say to you, if this is kind of the same situation that you're in, is that we live in a global community. Like we really do. With internet access, like you have the ability to set your rates in whatever denomination you would like, or currency, whatever currency you want. So if you want to do US dollar, euro, whatever it is, as long as you have a payment processor that's willing to allow you to accept that payment, and a bank that's willing to convert it back, or you can keep it in that that currency if you want. Like, we live in a global community. So depending on what's aligned for you, if you're like, well, I really want to help the people in my community, and I know that that's not the rate for them, then set a special rate. Like, hey, if you live nearby, here's the locals rate, and here's the rate for, you know, everyone else, essentially. And you wouldn't advertise the locals rate, but as you're having conversations with people, you let them know, like, hey, this is what I charge for locals. You know, I do a special deal because this is who I'm called to serve. Like, it's we live in a global community, so don't feel held back by whatever rate is expected where you live, right? So I will say that. There's nothing else I have to say about that. Yay, glad to have you here. Zara says, it took me so long to understand the value of what I do. I'm just getting comfortable with pricing and ready to create my first 10K offer. Yay. I am very happy to hear that. You have a huge value in what you do, and 10K at a minimum for sure. I'm guessing they would expect a lot, a trip on a yacht at the end of sessions. No, you'd be surprised. You would be surprised. We don't include a yacht in any of our coaching programs. We did go on a yacht at the Royal Retreat, but that's because it was an experience, and part of the experience was we were going to do a yacht thing. But it's not necessary, and that's one of the beliefs, right? So if that's one of your beliefs, it's a, you know, yeah, but I'm guessing they would expect a lot. Like, figure out a way to disempower that. Like, ask people, like, what do you actually include? And like I said, we have samples of high ticket coaching offers in this program, so you can see what people are actually offering for the rates that they're offering. Okay. All right, perfect. I'm glad that answered your question, Francisco. Carolyn says, should you use funnels right away, or are there baby steps? Yes, there are baby steps, and yes, you should use funnels right away. So yes, and your very first funnel, your very first baby step is what I would call a survey funnel. And what that looks like is you create a survey and you send it out and you ask people for responses. And when you do that, you offer an incentive for them to take the survey, which I typically recommend, like a $25 Amazon gift card to one random person. And then if they would like to enter to win that, then they put their email address. So that's your very first funnel. It's your very first way to capture email addresses. Then the next baby step is taking those survey results and turning that into marketing material. So turning that into your freebie, your your free training, like webinar, as we call it, anti-webinar, turning that into workshops, master classes, mini courses, live trainings, whatever it is. And then from there, we test out each piece of the funnel from the back to the front. So we start with our high ticket offer to make sure that we're really clear on our messaging. We're speaking to the high ticket client. And then from there, we work on the different pieces, like the freebie and the low ticket offer, so that we can bring in as many people as we like. Okay. All right, other questions? That is what I have for today. Don't forget that there is someone that is selling exactly what you are selling and offering at like twice the rate that you are. So just FYI, there was someone I knew who was like, yes, please do. There was someone I knew who was like doing sales, and I guess like he found someone else that was doing sales, and she had a $25,000 coaching program, and he was like, but I'm selling my coaching program for $5,000. So that's 5 times the rate. And my response was like, well, there's always someone, right? Like, there's always someone who understands the value of their transformation. And so I guess that's the final thing I'll end with, is that you do need to understand the value of your transformation. And it's not just like money is not the only valuable transformation. And I'm going to say that again. Helping someone earn money, make more money, or bring more money in is not the only valuable transformation. There is value in saving marriages. There's value in saving health. There's value in all of these other things and areas of our life. That's not just money, because You can't enjoy the money if you're not around. You can't enjoy the money if there's no one to enjoy it with, right? So it's like everything works together. And so for you to think that you have to have a money offer in order for someone to see the value means that you just don't see the value yet in what you're offering. So that's 100% the first thing that I would suggest you work on. Podcast every Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern. And if you have more questions on today's topic, you can go to Instagram at LaTisha Styles TV, type your question in today's Instagram post, or just comment it below. Until next time, remember that your dreams deserve your decision, and you deserve to achieve your dreams, but only if you decide to do whatever it takes to get them. So go, dream, decide, do, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Okay, bye. And